Welcome to Newsmaker of the Week, Network World's podcast that shines a spotlight on one individual whose actions or comments this week made big headlines across the network industry. I'm Denise Doobie, a senior editor here at Network World. Today I'm speaking with James Staten, principal analyst at Forrester Research. James tops our Newsmaker list this week because in the midst of all the hype around green technology, he sounded the warning to IT executives not to fall for vendor green scamming. Welcome, James. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you define the term greenwashing?
Sure. Greenwashing is essentially taking the environmental aspect of your company, applying it broadly to products that either don't have the same level of environmental benefits or don't have any environmental benefits at all.
What are some examples of this?
Basically, when you have a company that talks about one or two products in its product line that are very energy efficient, and they don't talk about those things as if they're talking about just that product, but that they're talking about their entire portfolio. So examples that we see is a blade system that is extremely energy efficient, and they won't talk specifically blades. They'll say, my servers are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have the majority of vendors jumped on the green bandwagon?
Yeah, they are very much aware that this is a top of mind for a lot of the C-level executives in most enterprises, and so they're very much wanting to be part of that conversation, whether they have a legitimate claim to be there or not.
Do some stand out to you as being more legitimately green than others?
Well, certainly the ones that have applied the most green technology to the broadest portion of their portfolio and also bring environmental practices to the table would fall into that category. So these would be companies that the majority of their product line are using the most efficient power supplies, the most efficient fans, the companies that have full recycle and reclamation programs to go with the products that they sell, and can do consulting around environmental efficiency. Any
vendors pop into your mind?
A lot of the major server vendors have pretty good practices here. HP and IBM both have a pretty good showing in this case.
Okay. Well, as time goes on, do you notice that the green hype is getting worse?
Well, we kind of are going into a period where it seems like everything is green, but we're starting to understand that there is a halo effect that's going on here, and that things look green and they sound green, but then when you put them into your data center or you put them into your environment, even the home, you see that if they're not used properly or they're not put in the ideal circumstance in which they got their green circumstances to begin with, they're not actually efficient.
When you talk to customers, are you getting a sense of how important green is in their buying decisions? Has their opinion changed?
Yeah, we've actually done studies on that, and our results show that in the United States, while it is growing in terms of its importance to C-level executives, to the point that about 75% of respondents believe it is important, we still see that them making buying decisions on environmental impact is still low.
Okay.
That's grown from about 25% at the early part of 2007 when we did the first survey to only about 35% at the end of last year.
If you're an IT executive and you are really interested in saving power and cooling costs in your data center, what's the best approach and where is the unbiased information?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. You know, really what it takes for you to find out how you can become more efficient is to holistically look at your data center environment or your overall IT infrastructure. Because it's not one product that's going to make you green. It's really understanding what in your existing environment can be done to achieve what level of efficiency. For example, if you have an older data center that is using older power sources and has large cooling systems in it that are just inefficient, it may not be possible for you to achieve some of the gains of somebody who has a more modern data center and has much more naturally efficient components that are already in there. So it's best to work with consultancies who have expertise around energy efficiency to help get a full thermodynamic and a full power analysis of your overall environment to see what is possible.
Are there areas like the data center that green matters more in, or areas where green isn't applicable yet, like maybe the desktop or the network? I mean, where is it real today, and where is it just really hype?
Yeah, it's actually real in most of the IT environments, but the degree of benefit you get from various steps varies quite a bit.
Okay.
So on the desktop, you absolutely can reduce the amount of power that the desktop uses, but that really isn't going to be a big impact unless your company has thousands of PCs and you can apply the same practices across the organization. So a really good example that we oftentimes see in these environments is the printers and the monitors. When your employees leave at night, do they turn those things off?
Right.
And if they don't turn them off, do they automatically go off after a period of time? Another one that most people don't think about is the surge protectors that all this stuff is plugged into.
Mm-hmm.
Simply by having the plugs in there, even though the equipment itself might be off, will still draw power.
Okay.
And so some of the modern surge protectors and power strips that you can buy actually prevent that. And so you can keep things plugged in, and they won't draw any power at all.
Okay. Is this a fad that's going along with the, political concerns around the environment, or is this something that has real substance behind it in terms of IT? Like being green is actually a smart move for IT specifically.
Yeah, this is a really good question, because a lot of people that lived through the gas crisis of the 70s say, well, are we just going to reemerge like we did then, and gas is going to go back down to 50 cents or $1 a gallon, and we'll all look at this and laugh?
Mm-hmm.
We don't think so. We think at this point that we're not going to see significant drops in the cost of power. In fact, from this point forward, we anticipate it's all up from here.
Okay.
And as a result, that means you've really got to start looking at your overall IT efficiency now. And there's lots of things you absolutely can do today. And the way I kind of like to think about this is very similar to how we think about our own personal diets.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go on a diet and lose 20 pounds and then go back to your old way of eating, because you'll just put 20 more pounds on.
Oh, that's the problem.
So we very much need to see the same kind of behavior from IT. You can't just say, I'm going to do an IT consolidation this year and I'll be fine.
Right.
You have to change the way you do things. You have to start thinking environmentally efficient. So like a really simple example is when you have new applications you want to deploy, don't think put it on a server.
Mm-hmm.
Think put it on a virtual server.
Right. Okay. Is there any way to avoid being green scammed by a vendor? Any telltale signs that this is just a marketing ploy and not really a green technology?
Yeah, I think the best advice is to have a third party who can help validate your environmental plan and will actually do the calculations of the efficiencies up front.
Okay.
And that means bringing in one of the IT consolidation consultancies such as Accenture, IBM Global Services, HP Professional Services, or some of the other firms that have this kind of expertise. You really want that objective third party to say these technologies applied in this way, in this environment, will yield these benefits. Because as we talked about before, just because a server is efficient doesn't mean that that server in your environment is going to be efficient. In fact, it might actually end up being the opposite.
Right. Well, thank you, James, for the information on the green technology. But now that we've wrapped up this week's news, let's learn a little bit more about the Newsmaker. We have a standard set of questions we ask tech industry types like yourself. And here we go. What was your first computer?
My first computer was a Data General 1. It was an upgrade from my electric typewriter that allowed me to take an 8-pound laptop to work with me and to school.
Nice.
And was I'd call it more of a transportable than a laptop, because I was really not going to carry that to class.
Okay. And what's your favorite gadget?
My favorite gadget probably right now is going to be my BlackBerry. I just really getting more from it than I ever have in the past. I have a Curve, and there's so much more I can do on the web now with that tool, such as Facebook, and more than I could before, which was really just email and calendaring.
Right. Do you have a favorite website?
Boy, I'd have to say because we're in the NBA playoffs, it's probably going to be ESPN.com.
Okay, that's a good one. And do you have any favorite online or video games?
Boy, I wish I had time. I was addicted to Diablo when it came out, and then its sequel, Diablo 2, and I actually still play that periodically. But I have had so little time with all the things that are going on in IT transformation to really spend time on games in the past.
Well, if you could invent a new gadget, anything technology related, what would it be?
Oh, actually, I've been wanting this for a while. I want a TiVo for the Internet.
Okay.
I've been dying to have either a box or software that runs on my laptop where I can just set up. Here are the podcasts I listen to. Here's the online shows I want to watch. Here's the movies I'd like to download. Have it go get all that stuff. And then there's a unique feature that TiVo has that most DVRs don't, and I want this too, which is it makes suggestions for me.
Oh, yeah.
And if it's these that I like, like Man vs. Wild from the Discovery Channel, it'll go out and it will find programs on the internet that are like that I might also be interested in.
Well, that sounds like a good one, actually. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks again, James, for joining me.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to Network World's Newsmaker of the Week podcast. For an archive of this and all of Network World's podcasts, go to www.networkworld.com/podcast.